What's going on, everyone? Jack here from Half Chrome, and this is my Mini 3 Pro, and I'm going to show you how to get this thing set up and started and walk through the app with you so you know everything this thing is capable of, and you know how to get it in the air and use it to its fullest capabilities. Here we go. Now you do have to know there are two different remote controllers for this drone. We have the standard RC N1 controller. There's no screen on here. It doesn't have all the buttons that this one does, the RC Pro. Now I'm going to fly it with this, but I'll kind of show you how to set both of these up. So first, with the standard controller, note that the little sticks here are in the bottom. You're just going to pull them out and stick them up here. Then you're going to pull this out. This is where your phone goes. Your phone becomes your screen. And then there is a little cable here that you're going to attach your phone to. Now, this one doesn't have all of the buttons that the fancy remote does. We have one scroll wheel on top. Over here, we have a picture and video button. So tap for photo, long press for video. We have a function button up here. This will change the gimbal wheel to a zoom wheel. And then we have the dial here on the front. To go from CNA mode to normal to sport. We have your return to home and pause button and your power button as well. Now, if you opted for the fancy remote with this built-in screen, it's definitely a little bit nicer. The sticks are here in the back. Again, you're going to pull them off and screw them on. You want to be really careful with these sticks. They're smaller. I'm not sure why DJI opted for smaller, thinner sticks, so they seem to be more fragile in my mind. But a couple of things. Again, we have our modes button here, return to home, power. Then you've got your record and your camera photo button here. Then we have two wheels, one for the gimbal, one for zooming, and then we have two customizable buttons on the back, so that's nice. So to get this thing started, the first thing you're going to want to do is remove the gimbal cover. There's a little lever here on the bottom. Just kind of push that, and then you can unfold this in really any direction. It doesn't actually matter. It used to matter if you did the front or the back first. It does not now. Now it's a tap and a hold to turn on your drone. You should hear it power up. I'm going to go set this down so it's ready to fly. I'm going to turn on my controller. It's a tap and a press. Same for either remote. The screen will power up and we'll be ready to go in no time. Okay, so you can see that we have picture here, so we're going to go ahead and walk through some of the spots on the screen for you.
Please check it on the map.
All right, so our home point has been updated. We can check that on the map, and the map is in the lower left-hand corner right here. Right? If I double tap, it gets bigger, and you can see where we're at. And if I tap it again, it's going to go back to my video screen. All right, so just looking at the remote here from the top, there are some things you need to know. N mode, that's normal mode. That's the switch here on the remote. If I flip it to the left, that's CNA smooth mode. It flies a little bit slower. If I flip it to the right, that's sport mode. It flies a little bit faster. Let's put it in actually normal mode. We can see takeoff permitted. That's kind of just my general information to the right of that. You can see I have 98% battery. That's how much time I have left to fly. You can see it's at 00. It's because I have not taken off yet. Then I have some other information. This is my link to the drone. You can see that I have good link. My obstacle avoidance is currently off. That's what that red symbol is there. I have 19 satellites, which is really good. And then I have those three dots. Those are my settings. Before we get into the settings, let's take a look at some of these other icons on the screen here. Right, I have my takeoff button here on the left in the middle of the screen. And then over on the right, I have some other buttons up at right above that record button there. It'll tell me what mode I'm in. If I tap that, I can switch from normal. Here I'm in video mode. I can go normal. I can go slow motion. But let's stay in normal. We're in video. We can see other things. I have master shots. I have quick shots. I have hyperlapse, and I have pano. Now if I go to photo, it'll change some of those things. And then I can see I have single. I have 48 megapixel. I have AEB, or auto exposure bracketing, where it'll take pictures at different exposures. I have burst photo. I have time shot. Right. Looks like I also can do master shots, quick shots, hyperlapse, and pano right from the from the photo. Now my auto exposure bracketing, you can see I have the option or 3 or 5 different exposures. Let's go back to video mode. Now before we talk about things at the bottom here, let's get this drone up in the air. Now to get in the air, I can do one of two things. I can either hold the sticks down and in, and my propellers will spin, or I can tap this takeoff button, which is now return to home. I like the down and in method. I don't like to tap the screen if I don't have to. So let's get this in the air. We're just going to go ahead and throttle up. Now you hear the beeping. That is obstacle avoidance. We'll get it out there so it's not in the way. Still beeping. Now this drone does have forward and rear obstacle avoidance. There are no side obstacle avoidance sensors. Now you can see that it's working here on the screen. I remember it was red before this because it's off by default, but if I tap on that icon, it'll tell me normal vision sensors, right? That's the mode that I'm in. Now I can actually tap the screen to adjust my exposure. So if I do that, it'll kind of set the exposure to where I'm tapping, right? So kind of depending on how you want, you know, if there's a dark area or a light area, you can kind of set the exposure that way. You can see here that my height is 2.9 meters and my distance is 6 meters from home. Now, if you're in the United States and you don't like meters, you can change that to feet, and I'll show you how to do that. Also, things to note here, I've got my storage. I've got 3 hours of video at 4K 30, and my exposure value is currently set to 0.0. Okay, so let's take a look at this little camera button in the corner. Currently, I'm on full auto, but if I want to change some of the settings, I tap that, and now I'm in Pro mode. And you can see right now that my shutter speed is way too slow, right? 1/60 of a second. Let's go ahead and dial it down. Let's see, I can go all the way to 1/8000th of a second. That is clearly too much. Probably somewhere in the 1000, I'm guessing. Super sunny day, right? Looks probably a little overexposed still. There we go. Something like that. Yeah, you can kind of set your exposure however you'd like to, right? I can change my ISO, and I can, you know, kind of match it if I needed to, right? So you have the ability to change some of those things, but you cannot change the aperture, right? That is a fixed 1.7 value. All right, so let's go back to auto, and let's look at some of the other things you can change. You can change the resolution. We can shoot in 4K up to 60 frames a second. If I needed to, 2.7K. Again, I can go all the way to 60 frames a second, and 1080, I can do 60 frames a second. Now, I can actually shoot higher if I need to, if I go into the slow motion mode. All right, but let's leave it at 4K. I like to shoot at 4K 30 frames a second for most everything. If I'm gonna do some slow-mo, then that's when I'm gonna bump the frame rate up from 30 frames a second. Otherwise, you're getting gigantic file sizes, and if you don't need gigantic file sizes, there's no need to do that. Now, one of the things that is nice here is I can switch to vertical video just with the tap of a button right there, and you can see it rotate. That's kind of a neat little feature. I can tap to zoom here if I want to, or if I want, I can use the zoom wheel, right? So that's my right finger here. We'll go ahead and zoom in. Looks like 2 times at 4K. If I'm at 1080, I bet I get a little bit more zoom. Yeah, so if I'm at 1080, I get up to 4x zoom. Now that's a digital zoom, so just kind of keep that in mind. Then I have my autofocus button, and like I said before, we can tap to focus if we want to, right? So make sure you're on autofocus there. All right, so let's walk through the settings here. Tap the upper right-hand corner. That gets you into the settings menu. All right, so the first thing I have is safety, right? Flight assistance, obstacle avoidance action, right? I can bypass, that means it's gonna go around an obstacle. I can brake, that means it's just gonna stop when it sees something, or I can turn that off if I like to live dangerously. I sometimes do. Now when it's in bypass mode, you can disable sideways flight. There are no side sensors on this thing, so a lot of people will do that. That helps you avoid crashing into a tree. I've done that, not with this drone, but drones that have obstacle avoidance without side sensors, that can be tricky. So never rely on obstacle avoidance. Just make sure that you're paying attention and you're using that as kind of like a last resort. All right, display radar map, we've got that on. Okay, so flight protection, max altitude. If you want to keep under a certain altitude, you're going to want to do that. Remember, in the United States, 400 feet, that is your limit. Max distance, you can set a max distance if you want to make sure you keep it close to you for some reason. And auto return to home altitude, that is super important that you set that higher than the highest obstacle in your area, right? So depending on where you fly, you may need to go ahead and change that. Now, if I need to update my home point, I can do that by clicking the Update Home Point button. If things aren't working properly, you may need to calibrate your sensors. Always calibrate if you go to different locations, at least your compass. Anyway, your IMU shouldn't have to calibrate that. We get information on our battery, unlock geozone. So this is a geo-locked drone. Some people don't like that about DJI, but they won't let you fly wherever you want. They're gonna make sure you're flying in safe areas. So if you have to fly somewhere that is geo-locked, you have to get permission. You can do that on their website. And if you lose your drone, you can find it there. Let's take a look at advanced safety settings. Now, this is important. Something that you need to do if you're flying indoors is go to advanced safety settings. And if your signal is lost, you don't want it to return to home. You either want it to descend or you want it to hover. I usually set it to hover if I'm flying indoors. That way, if I lose signal, I just walk over to it and then take control of it myself. I don't want it to land on something that it shouldn't be landing on. Emergency propeller stop. So if I need to get this thing out of the sky, there's a helicopter approaching me, I push those sticks the way that it says. All right, so let's take a look at the control menu. Now here is where I'm gonna change it to Imperial. That's where I get my feet so that makes a little bit more sense to me. Okay, subject scanning, if I'm taking pictures and I want it to look for people. Gimbal mode, follow me in FPV mode. I'm gonna make a video on the FPV mode. I think it's really cool, and I think in certain situations it makes sense, but for most of the people out there, you're gonna want follow mode. That's gonna keep everything nice and level. That's probably what you're looking for. And then we have advanced gimbal settings. So if I want to slow the gimbal down or speed the gimbal up, I can do that here. I like the settings as they currently are, and I can set them in normal and cine mode. And can I do it in sport mode? I can do it in sport mode as well. So that is also pretty darn nice. I can calibrate my gimbal if I need to. Stick mode, mode 2, that's how most people fly, but if I need to change it, I can. Button customization, right? So if you have this remote, you can customize those buttons. So my C1 button that's back here, right now it's going to recenter or tilt the gimbal down, right? That's cool. My button 2 right now is to switch to vertical video. I can change that. What are my options here? I can take my auto exposure lock on or off, increase the exposure value, decrease the exposure value, open my camera settings, or switch that. I'll leave it to portrait landscape mode. That's fine. All right, so my right dial here is set to zoom in or out. I can change that to adjust the focal length, adjust the exposure value, adjust the shutter speed, or adjust the ISO. That's kind of nice. Those are cool options. C1 plus right dial. Oh, so I have some combinations. I can do some different things. All right, so if I hold C1 and hit the right dial, I can adjust my shutter speed. C2, adjust my ISO. I like that. All right, I like those options that I have. I'm assuming they're the same. Yeah, so zoom in and out, focal length, exposure value, shutter speed. Doesn't seem to really adjust my focal length at all. Didn't think that it would. All right, let's adjust my exposure value. All right, that does work. Let's go back. So adjusting focal length isn't really an option. I'm not sure why they pretend that it is. I'm going to set it to adjust exposure value and adjust shutter speed. All right, let's go back to auto. All right, back to our options. Okay. Button customization, RC calibration. Let's take a look at advanced. So if I want to change the expo on some of these things, I can, which I think for the Cine mode, I might have to do that. I just feel like the Cine mode is a little bit too fast, and this is how I can kind of slow it down. I may make a video on how to do that. And then flight tutorial, that's basically what I'm doing here, so don't need that button. Let's take a look at the camera settings. I have different formats here. I can record an MP4 or MOV. My color is either normal or D-Cine-alike. If you're not familiar with D-Cine-alike, it's a very flat profile and allows you to do color grading yourself. So I'm going to turn that on, kind of take a look at the screen now. It's definitely a little bit more washed out. That's more for professionals. If that's you, go for it. I like to shoot an H.265. It's a little bit smaller of a format. Video subtitles. What subtitles are we adding to our videos? The video subtitles actually just, if you're playing back in a video player, it'll give you the ISO and the shutter speed and the aperture and all of that information as a subtitle. And I find that to be valuable information, so I'm going to leave that on. Anti-flicker, I'm going to leave that at auto. Histogram. If you turn the histogram on, you'll get, you can see it here now, just kind of the visual representation of the lights and the darks. If you're into photography, that's something you may want. Peaking level, we're going to leave that off. All right, so overexposure warning, if you turn that on, you're going to get those zebra lines to show you what is being overexposed. Let's take a look. Looks like we have good exposure in general. We can see some overexposure on the plant with the white flowers, but that's generally okay for what we're doing right now. Grid lines, I like to turn all that stuff on. It helps me set up my shots. White balance, you can change that. We can format our SD card. We have a tiny bit of internal storage that you can't use. I mean, I guess you can use it, but really, why do we not have minimum 1632? I mean, it just seems like for the amount of money that it costs to do that, seems like a goofy way to save 50 cents or something. I don't know. Cache recording, sure. All right, then we can reset our camera parameters. Let's look at transmission. Probably not anything you want to mess with here. Leave it in dual band, leave it in auto, and then we've got our about. So here's where you can kind of check for updates if you need to update your aircraft firmware, which I think I actually do need to do that. I'm running the current app. I did update the firmware on my controller, but I do think I have an update for my aircraft. So let's go ahead and check for updates, which it may or may not do because, yeah, network connection required. So I'll do that when I land. Let's take a look at some of the flight modes that are kind of fun. So let's go to first Quickshots. All right, so you got to find a subject. All right, so I'm going to start my quick shot.
3, 2.
It's going to be a countdown. And what did I choose? I think I chose a droney. We're doing a droney here. You can see my beautiful, messy backyard, my collapsing pool. And I can change the distance on that. Once it does the quick shot, it then returns back to its home point. It does automatically record quick shots, so that's kind of nice. Let's go 4K for the next one, and then let's change it up. So we've got droney, we've got rocket, we've got circle, we've got helix, and we've got boomerang, and we have asteroid. Asteroid is kind of a neat one where it creates this like almost 360 degree deal. So let's go ahead and tap that. I'll show you what that looks like, and let's go ahead and start. It's a different sort of shot, very different than a lot of other different things. Subject lost. Try again.
3, 2, 1.
Don't lose me. If I manually select it.
2, 1.
So it actually will do this shot. It's going to fly up and away, and then it's going to kind of do some magic and process the asteroid together so that you get kind of this neat little tiny planet effect. So that's kind of cool. And it goes up there, and then it's going to take a few different shots from different angles so that it can kind of pull it all together and stitch it together and make it kind of look neat and different and nice. But it is a really unique shot that you're just not going to get unless you have another DJI drone. I think they introduced this, was it the Mavic Air, the original Mavic Air? Hard to say, but I think it was that one. Really neat shot. I like to do it. I think it's a different perspective that you just can't get from a non-DJI product. You can see I've got about 5 minutes left on 20% battery, so I don't know how long we've been flying. I'll check that out here in a second, but that's pretty much all of the settings. Other than that, let's take a look. You know, there's hyperlapse, which, you know, is kind of neat. Taking pano photos, let's do that. You can see there are different, there's a sphere pano, there's a 180 pano, there's a wide angle pano, there's a vertical pano, and again, it'll take the picture and it'll actually stitch it together for you. So let's do a wide angle pano. Get a different shot there, and you click the go and it takes a bunch of pictures, and then it's going to stitch them together for you. So that's kind of how the pano works. I'm getting lower on battery. We'll see at what point does it actually tell me I have to return home. I'm guessing at 15%. So now it's kind of processing and thinking about that. I think we've been flying for like 25 minutes or so. 26 minutes, that seems about right. All right, so battery level low, return to home. I got that warning at 15 minutes. Tells me I have 4 minutes left. And now it's initiating the return to home, which I'm gonna go ahead and cancel and do myself. Actually, it's just beeping at me. It's not returning home yet. So it will eventually just return to home. I don't suggest you let it return home. It's always better to return these things yourself. So let's do that. Bring it back. Ooh, sideways obstacle avoidance is on. Looks like my sideways obstacle avoidance is inactive, which is, yeah, disable sideways flight. I don't like that. I need to be able to fly sideways. Come on. Okay. Let's bring her back. Alright, so it looks like at 10% it initiates the return to home sequence. So that is it. That's a basic walkthrough on how this app works, how this drone works, getting it up into the air and using some of those settings. If you have questions, please let me know. Leave a comment down below. Is there something I didn't go over, something I missed? Is there a setting that you want a little bit more clarity on? I can do that for you. Now, if you're interested in this drone, I'd love it if you use the link down below. It's a link to Amazon. It's an affiliate link. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps support this channel. So if you buy this drone or even something else, you need a pair of socks, you get them from Amazon, it'll send us a little bit of commission, and it'll help us continue to make videos for you. I hope this was helpful. If it was, give us a thumbs up. We'll see you next time. Good luck, everyone, and happy flying.